question and something that you would like to say?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Charles Michel. I'm at the World Bank responsible for air transportation, and I was asked to make a statement or a question or to provoke this discussion from the perspective, from a global perspective, and from a perspective of the challenges we face. We are development institutions, so our interest is not aviation, but development. Our interest is that developing and emerging nations progress. And one element is transportation, and in there a small one is aviation. And aviation is suffering. But we need to step back and really look back globally what that means right now. You know, we have now spent about $230 billion in government aid to airlines. Number one, the United States, 40% of that, I think about 80 billion. The rest, Europe. In Africa so far, they spent 2 billion. And that really raises the question, the role of government. It goes even deeper. Are airlines really a sustainable private sector business or not? Or is the business model today wrong? Was the business model of the 80s the right one? Where it was a conglomerate of businesses with hotels and other businesses that fueled the airlines? Because I'm not sure that it is sustainable the track we are on right now. Right now we spend lots of government money into airlines that actually are all nationalized. If you look how are airlines worth 80 billion in the United States, or is the United States owner of these airlines? Same in Germany. We at the World Bank help emerging countries and have two questions to ask. Two questions. Number one, is connectivity key for this airline? This airline maintains connectivity or not? If you disappear, will connectivity collapse? And every country we are looking at, from the southern countries in Africa without naming it, to small island states, the answer is no. If there's a market, there are many other carriers coming. Number two, if you save this airline anyway, was it profitable before COVID? The answer again is no. So in other words, we are financing in developing countries airlines. Governments do it for political reasons, while no money goes to hospital, no money goes to education in a COVID crisis. That is not sustainable for 80% of the countries in the world. And I think this is a challenge we need to ask ourselves before we say, let's go back to 2019, maybe in 2025. Because the world has faced a problem that touches all sectors, and our sector now is the only one financed. They don't finance hotels, they don't finance restaurants to a certain extent. So I think we need to be conscious on that and ask these questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Would any like to respond to that? Please.
Yeah, part of that I agree, because when we're talking about the money that comes to the airlines, we haven't seen this in Latin American Caribbean, unfortunately. And since the first moment, what we had there, we went to the governments in the area just to say, hey, we're not asking to give to the airlines money. We're just asking for reasonable and under marketing basis loans for the airlines. But even that was not possible because they say that they have so many sectors to help. So what was done in the Latin American Caribbean, actually, it's a miracle. I mean, surviving without any help. What we could do about that? What was done about that? We tried to change some rules, labor rules, fears, a lot of stuff, but this was not. That was not all that the industry needed. I agree with you when you say that, okay, there is no lack. If we lose one airline, probably another one is going to be there, or many others are going to be there, because there is the connectivity in Latin American Caribbean. This is all that we have to connect people. It is 100% necessary. As I said, here we don't have railroads or something like that. But when you ask if is it a good thing to help the airlines, since we have the hospital, a lot of other industry, I would say this depends on the the economic process that you agree with, if you go to Milton Friedman, probably you're going to say, okay, this is the freedom of choice. We don't have to help them. This is your problem. But actually, when you see the situation in Latin America, that would be very necessary to keep the airlines alive. That's the way that I see it.
Thank you. Nick?
Airlines got a lot of money in the U.S. That's true. And there was good reason to do that. The CARES Act, which mainly made the airlines a pass-through or an employment agency for the government, was done because we made the case successfully that our employees are different. They're subject to constant retraining and certification process. You can't take them offline and then just throw them back on the job the next day. You know, basically throw a pilot the keys and say, start up the airplane. The people who were laid off in October when the government missed the deadline for the second CARES Act, some of them are still, tens of thousands were laid off. They were rehired in December when the second CARES Act was passed. Many of them still are in the process of being retrained and recertified to do their jobs. Also, what we do for the economy is understood. Not every day, not every congressional hearing, I'd have to say. But what we do and the secondary effects that somebody mentioned before down the line are considerable. So was it worth it? Yes. Are we a sustainable model? Yes. 3 days before, well, about a week before the crisis, there was a Wall Street confab. Most of my members were there. Everybody was talking about the fact that they had fortress balance sheets designed to withstand an event 3 times worse than 9/11. A couple days later, we had our Ford retreat to talk about sustainability and climate change, because we're going to make our big move, change our goals to 2050, all sorts of things like that. A week later, we were fighting for survival. The government aid gave us a lifeline. It kept tens of thousands of people in their jobs, paying taxes at the federal, state, and local levels, not claiming unemployment, being able to keep their health care. So it was significant. I think what's happening now in the U.S. in terms of passenger levels proves that we can get back. Changes will be made. We still need to get international travel back, lift the travel restrictions. We need to get business travel back, so there's a ways to go. But I do think the model is sustainable. I do think we are absolutely necessary to what happens all over the world. You know, our tag is Airlines for America, we connect the world. It's indispensable. And it's the miracle of aviation that we all get to be here, that we get to go where we want to go. And the notion that you can't have airplanes is not going to ever happen.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a very good question. I don't think there is one single answer, even though I do say that I'm very much in agreement to what Nick said. I mean, I don't challenge anything there. I think that airlines play a very important role. They have made the world a much smaller place than it is, and they have given us such a connectivity that no other I would say generation or last generations have enjoyed compared to anything else that the mankind had enjoyed before. So taking away this kind of freedom is simply something which I think goes against the basic principles of what we have been hoping to have around the world. Now, there was no other choice than for the governments to step in. And you say, why airlines? But you can say, I mean, this is not the first crisis. Let's go back 10 years. I mean, quick rewind. Then also tough times. What was given to the financial system in order to keep it going? I mean, this money is, we are not talking about tens, probably talk about hundreds times more than what the airline industry has received through the state support. And there is also very many specificities concerning this crisis. 10 years ago we had the financial crisis, which then changed or moved over to the economic crisis. It hit almost all the sectors in the same way. I mean, there was no sector which was not hit, in fact. Or there were very few, but some more, some less, but there was a very clear hit. This time it's not the case. At least in Europe, the economic drop was steeper than 10 years ago with the crisis. But this was achieved only through I would say, 25% or 30% of the sectors affected. Because there were sectors who said, we had never had a better year than 2020. Yep. So, it's not something that was, I would say in that sense, fairly hitting all the different economic sectors. Travel, tourism, transport, mobility, aviation, this was in the forefront. If 90-95% is wiped away, not because you had a structural problem, not because you did something wrong, but because the governments decided that you cannot exercise your business, which is also unheard of, but it was necessary, probably, I would say, for a shorter period of time with different kinds of restrictions, but you know, this is also always, you know, afterwards you can be smart, but not at the moment. But my point is that there you have to rebalance something. So for me, this is an issue about rebalancing the effect, where the governments were taking away. I mean, the financial crisis, the banks did wrong, and they got rewarded for it. Now, the airlines did nothing wrong, and it would have been a crime if they wouldn't have been rewarded. But the two things I want to say. First, we talk about the airlines, but we should talk about the whole aviation value network, because the airlines cannot live without the airports, they cannot live without the air navigation service providers, they even cannot live without the ground handlers. So all of the sector should also receive much more balanced support. There's been a lot of focus on airlines, much less on the other players in the aviation value network, and I think we have to be mindful about that. I think some governments thought, okay, we pay for the airlines and then they would sort of pass it on also in terms of additional, or in terms of paying for the costs that, for example, the air navigation service providers got, which were also significant, and we need them all, and it's all about safety. So this is one thing to be kept in mind. And secondly, and I heard very well what Montserrat said earlier about, you know, her members about survival. But even though, as I said, I'm fully in agreement that the governments had to step in, it was necessary, you also need to put it in a perspective that in Europe we have airlines who have got, we have what, 9 billion? And we have airline who is competing with them, who has got 0 cents, and who is providing more connectivity, is moving around more people. So it's also about the financial viability of the airlines. And to me, also as a regulator, I'm just saying to what I think is, what happened with the banks? The banks were actually are now much healthier than ever before, because they have also much higher reserve requirements. Now this crisis, nobody was talking about any effect on the banking system. Should also see whether the current financial requirements for the viability of the airline are fit for purpose. Because there were those airlines who had money in the bank, who were thinking about long term, and who were able to finance even though when they were not supported by state or got very little support. And there are those airlines who simply were saying, well, we are too big to fail, or we are too important, and just give us the money. Again, difficult times, no right way, no wrong way, but also no fair way.
Just a very short comment. I think Henrik has hit the nail on the head with the discrepancies between the different stakeholders and also between the different airlines, because Europe again is different. Europe is made of many countries, and therefore this is I mean, all the decisions regarding state aid have been taken at the national level, creating distortions within a country, and obviously within Europe, being aviation such a mobile business that, you know, with a European AOC, the airlines can operate from anywhere and move anywhere. In Europe, it really is something that is, we don't know the effects, but they're going to be coming in the next, we'll see them in the next few months. They will have an effect, for sure.
I will just say one thing with respect to airports, because of course we talk about airlines in Latin America. Well, not a single airport has received a single penny from any governments. The only thing that we got in Brazil was the possibility of deferring the concession payments until the end of the year. But in the rest of the region, absolutely nothing. And you know, this private sector in airports in Latin America is extremely important. Together with Europe, is the part of the world with the highest percentage of airports run by private concessionaires. And actually, it is happening that in some places the concessionaire is actually handing over the key to the government, because, you know, there is no money, 0 money coming in. So it's a huge crisis, and there is a distinct possibility, okay, of some airports actually, I mean, it sounds terrible, but potentially having to shut down. And the social and economic impact that that will have for those regions is tremendous. Okay, and the thing is that the governments, why there are so many privately run airports? Because the governments don't have the money to build that infrastructure that is so incredibly expensive.
Thank you. Any more questions? Please, Angela.
I have one comment and then a question. The comment is, when we talked about the travel restrictions due to the disease, the WHO very early on in this pandemic said that there is no point in restricting travel to a place that already has immunity spread. So even though you had the International Organization of Health making this statement, making this assertion, it went on deaf ears to the government. So I think that's a lesson for us, somehow, somewhere, in terms of the capacity of international organizations to influence, to have the kind of influence that they were set up to have. And this is still going on. My question is, now that my understanding is the science and the medical field are saying that transmission by touch is not nearly what it is thought to be, that it's not, and I don't know about the Delta variant, maybe that's different, that there really is not a big transmissible risk of touch. Is that going to wind up making a difference when you put all this money and effort into a touchless environment? Is that going to be a waste?
I don't think so. What's happened with a lot of the technology and the innovation that's happened with the pandemic is that it's made the travel experience better in general. Those things many of them were in process, and they will continue to be. And I think that makes a difference. Again, we need our governments to look at what the science says. The Harvard study I mentioned before, they came to us early on and said, hey, you know what? You're probably over-cleaning your airplanes because the fomites don't matter that much. It's all airborne.
Thank you. Steve.
Few observations and maybe a comment and a question to the panel. Of course, it's obvious well that state money is also linked to conditions, right? Yeah. I always thought 2-3 months when the crisis started, this will be a big. We will have a lot of fatalities in airlines and in airports, small airports. I may refer to European situation, but there are many small airports. And I was wrong. There's really no airport that went bankrupt in Europe. No airport went bankrupt in Europe. There were a few insolvencies, but that's all. Airlines, nearly the same. And I was just wondering, that's the question I have, will there be a consolidation then later? Because frankly speaking, for airlines, it's investment time. Yeah, it's bargain time for buying airlines now. Yeah, but those who got money, and it's not only Lufthansa, it's British Airways, it's Ryanair, they all got money.
Ryanair didn't get the cent.
Huh?
Ryanair didn't get the cent.
British government not?
No.
I thought they were.
No.
But the big legacy carriers, let's take this a bit through. The condition is that they are not able to do any M&A transaction. They cannot buy other airlines, although it's a buyer's market at the moment. And that's the reason why, as fast as they can, and of course they also had an effect on their bonuses. Yeah? It's the most difficult discussion we have in the board, the bonus system. And that's the reason why this airline wants to get rid of public money as fast as possible, and that will happen very, very soon. But I still do doubt whether there will be consolidation. I mean, Charles, you mentioned that. Well, there are many new airlines coming up, and they will also benefit because they may not have the market power they need. But will there be consolidation? I mean, I don't see even airports going bankrupt somewhere. Secondary airports, a lot of secondary airports. Because finally, and that was one of the messages I learned at least, in the end, even if the transport sector and the aviation was not in the forefront of getting help, then governments in the end always think, well, before I close down an airport, before I close down an airline, then I do have this connectivity problem. I mean, when you make with this country, without getting all the hub connection, it's done.
Yeah.
As far as economic development is concerned. So there is, of course, a rationale of government to act like this, because there are other economic questions. And maybe even if you, by a market perspective, you say, well, it's maybe not good money, there can be an economic rationale of a government to act like this. Not especially to oneself, that they also say. But I was really surprised that there was not much move in the sector. One thing happened though. The engagement of the government in airlines, of course, drives the sustainability issue, because they often link their engagement into these airlines with, well, get greener issue, buy new aircraft, get more sustainable, and that has really given a push, I think. Including the question, is everything what you do necessary? Yeah? Is every short haul necessary to have at least a competing rail network? But I don't see a lot of market concerns, but I would like to hear your comment on that. Or Charles, what do you think about that?
Well, if I just may throw the today, the other question. We need to ask ourselves one question now. Airlines, should they be private? I mean, in 70 years, they made 2 years where they earned their capital, their cost of capital. 2, roads, railways, tunnels, you name it. All transportation industry normally are public. It's very hard to run it privately. So my question now is, instead of throwing that money that never will come back, and by the way, the bank, Switzerland, they got 65 billion in 2008, they paid it back with benefit to the government. But shouldn't we talk about nationalization of airlines that we consider important?
No.
Definitely not.
No.
And that's bullshit.
Just a point. I know Jeff has a question too. But so one point I was going to make.
Okay.
There were strings attached to the money we received. In one case, one airline borrowed $5 billion from the federal government in April or May. They got it in July. They paid it back about 2 months ago at $1 billion profit. So the government lent. I'd do that. Lend you $5 billion, get $6 billion back in 9 months, and not everything was a grant. And also, airports got billions of dollars, no string attached in the U.S. Education got money, no strings attached. So I'll just leave it at that. But nationalizing airlines, no.
With respect to everybody, in my view, we're way off of the topic of leadership and cooperation
We sure are.
and what needs to happen. So I follow up on Nick's comment and Henrik's comment and also Montserrat about the severity of the crisis that we're in and that survivability is the name of the game. So given that, conducting business as usual and just hoping that things get better is not a strategy for survival. So, using my supreme authority as the president of Hermes, I'm going to appoint this panel today to be responsible for leadership and cooperation in air transport. So my question to you is, as the people responsible, what is your prime objective now, and what is your single most thing that you want to achieve that gets the industry back on track?
Number one, survive. And we're on our way to doing that, but we have to protect. We need a plan, an umbrella, to pursue that so that governments do not harm and do not get in the way of the recovery. which many of them have an inclination to do, at times including my own. I would make a proposal that among this group, and we reach out, and we've talked about this, some already, let's have a concrete come out of this meeting. Let's put another meeting together with an idea about how we share what we're all doing. We've all been working on it individually, and we've been sharing information, but we need a template for how we're going to approach our government. We have done everything we can in the U.S. with our government. We have beat our heads bloody against the wall and can't get them to move on the travel restrictions. But we've done a lot of really good work, coalition letters with labor, everything. All that kind of information to be shared. But with all the disparate governments doing all the different things we should put our heads together to unify a message to all governments and go in together to try to make them realize. And it's not just going into them. Let's be honest, it's got to be partially a public relations or a communications effort.
Well, I will just echo what I've said earlier. I don't think I have too much to add to that, but in a way, I think this is something that the panelists have also been expressing. I leave the survival aside. I mean, I think there is already too much survival. I mean, in Europe, honestly, I wouldn't mind more consolidation. I wouldn't mind also some exits. And I hope that we are going to see of that happening after a while. But it's clear that now there are other priorities. I mean, you also hear that airlines are putting a lot of orders for the new aircrafts, and I think that is a priority for the moment. Nobody really wants to deal that much with buying out other airlines. And also, since many have got a lot of support, I think that they are going to eat up that support very quickly. And then we will be in a new situation, perhaps in 12, 24 months. I think probably the picture might be a little bit different. And also what you said, Michael, earlier, I mean, the strings are attached. And I have also personally made sure that the strings are attached, because I think that it is absolutely immoral to get money from the state and then use it to buy up other airlines. But also I'm well aware that even those who have got a lot of support are very keen to get rid of it and to go back to the market, so to say. And of course then the strings are not attached anymore, and of course it's also for them to see how they would put forward. So leave the survival. Restart, I think that's what we all want to see. That is what's happening. That's what we are also working for. This is about the trust of the passenger and confidence of the passenger with the health, safety and everything that comes now. And of course it's about the digital certificates, and it's also about the global opening, which also means from a European perspective also the adequacy decisions on the reciprocity of the certificates and so on, which would then open up the traveling and the aviation market again in a safe and sustainable way. Second, recovery. So that has already, we see everywhere, domestic has been the priority, which is natural, then regional, then international. I think it's very important, and there we need to work together. Cooperation. What I see here, you know, Ricardo, Nick, everybody's here, representing different regions, but we are all interested in the same thing, and we need to cooperate because the problem, the challenge is exactly the same. So that's why the cooperation is essential. Now we should ask the question, which I would have wanted to drill into today, but we don't. Are those international institutions which exist, are they fit for purpose? What about ICAO? What do we get out of it? CART, okay, but has it done any difference? No. And this talking and getting nowhere. Is this institution, which is considering the 1944 Chicago Convention as a Bible, is it still fit for purpose today? And I think this is a topic to be discussed. Thank you. I also would say some words that, you know, sustainability, all that. IATA needs to change as well to represent airlines. And as long as they keep on representing the legacy airlines and not all the airlines, which are actually the other ones providing the connectivity and the growth, at least that was before the COVID, it's also the question, what is their role? Because sometimes you get the positions which are, you know exactly where this position comes, but it's not really in the interest of the whole aviation industry. Third is for us in Europe, preserve the single European aviation area with connectivity, competition and affordability. The fourth, I would say, is the change. You know, build back better, build back even better, and so on. And that would also mean that sustainability has to become a norm. sustainability has to become fully embedded in aviation. If that doesn't happen, no license to grow, it starts from Europe, it will spill over to other regions. You see it already in Japan, you see it some parts of Asia. The US new administration has a different view on this, so that will be the next one. And the last, of course, is the big question also, how to embrace the smart solutions, digital solutions, AI, and how to survive when you get the competition, especially when it comes to the distribution market from the big tech, and how aviation continues to be in lead in its own sector.
Ricardo needs to leave, so just a final comment from you, please.
Hi, thank you very much. Sorry about that. I have to beat test again, you know. Yeah, I have to do that. But I'd like to answer your question, Mr. President, our President. I agree. Everything that was said here is about confidence. Everything that was said here is that we have the tools. I truly believe that CART is not on board, not because of CART, because the document is there, but because of the government that represents the delegation that we're at ICAO. So at this moment, the only thing that I think that would be possible is go again in some way, or maybe with information and talking again as association, go again to the Knights of the Round Table and sit and just say, okay, we have the whole protocol. Everything that was asked for this industry, we have done. When you're talking about the financial support, we haven't in Latin America and Caribbean. It's okay, we still fight for that. But we need one thing, is standardization. If this is the world, we have to come back to fly. I'll tell you, when I was thinking to come here, I was very excited to come here, but I thought a lot because it was so hard. Jeff was helping me, the government of Greece was helping me to get the documents to pass through France. So, what? And right now, where is this answer? In my opinion, as an industry, we should go together for the World Health Organization because this is real. They are saying the rules. So why not sit there and say, okay, why you don't support us, support each country with each document that we have? So I believe that with this the problem would, at least 80% of the problem would be solved, and we could travel with confidence again.
Ricardo, before you go, I can see your point, but I think earlier something you mentioned, one of the issues we have with ICAO, Henrik points out, and also WHO, is they can talk, they can come up with an agreed protocol, but it is all voluntary. And this we also see as a problem,
Nobody cares.
I think, from a strategic level. If they aren't willing to agree that what they actually are going to implement, what they actually agree to, it's difficult. And same with keeping single European aviation market open. If the EU can make proposals, but member states keep their own competency and jurisdiction, you end up in a situation where it's difficult for travelers, and Montserrat members and others, to navigate the world.
Absolutely.
So when we revisit this question about how do we want to influence international organizations or show leadership amongst the associations, we have to answer the question how to get from talking about it to getting member states, countries of ICAO or Moderator to agree to implement as a mandatory basis what they actually talk about and agree to. You know?
Yeah, I agree.
Without it, we don't get anywhere.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, very good.
Andreas, just last point that I missed. Have a good trip. Last point that I missed, but I think it's also important to mention in this context, and this is about the resilience. I mean, we can mean many things about resilience, and I already earlier mentioned the financial resilience also of the airlines, but resilience also means being better prepared for the next crisis. I think we have now beefed up a lot about this health safety. It's going to be with us to one way or another, but I bet that the next big crisis is nothing to do with health. It's going to be something else. And I just want to point you to one issue, cybersecurity. During the COVID times, 300 and 530% cybercrime against aviation interests went up in Europe. I think it's a global phenomenon. We are talking about 20 billion, which is quite a limited number today globally. 61% of these attacks are against airlines. The rest are airports and ANSPs and what have you. But this is a growing threat, and perhaps the source of the next crisis. And I think this is something also one should keep in mind when we talk about the future and building the resilience. I stop now.
So just one last
closing comments,
one comment. Yes, I mean all these ideas are amazing and they're great, but I'll go back to the president's point when he made his first speech: is how do we narrow down these into some concrete actions? And then Nick has got a very good idea, which is perhaps through Hermes. Let's make sure we have a plan and we develop a moral contract and we develop some principles and ideas on which we can actually make things happen, because otherwise this is amazing and it's great, but then it'll finish here. So yeah, maybe we can talk about that later during lunch and how to make it
There's a
happen.
lot of subjects for the president to think about the next Hermes event, but I think the future is when he should concentrate.
Okay, so I'm aware of the time, so 2 lines as final comments.
No, basically, I mean, I agree with everything that has been said. I am very pleased about your comments on ICAO. To tell the truth, having been in so many meetings with ICAO in Latin America, and at the end of those meetings was, so what? So what is happening? Nothing is happening there. And that's what I was saying at the beginning, this revolution, I mentioned the word revolution, that's precisely what I was referring to. We are hopeful, however, in our part of the world, still countries rely very much on ICAO for guidance, okay? So we hope that with the new Secretary General, hopefully, at least in our part of the world, there will be some change. And of course, the recognition of certificates. I mean, I was just sharing with some of you, I have this certificate from Panama. I don't know if actually it's accepted or not in Europe. So this is the sort of thing, the practical thing.
No, not yet. Europe has done an adequacy decision with only one country, which is Switzerland.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
But I agree, of course, with Montserrat's position, that we have to do something concrete.
Nick, any 2 lines of final comments?
We've got work to do, clearly, but we've shown that we can do it. I'm very taken on the cybersecurity side. We've really ramped up. We're already ramping up investment. It's clear that we have to, but we do need to look beyond the current crisis and get templates in place to react very quickly to it. It's very easy when you're in the survival mode to not look at things that could happen to you to make it worse. And, frankly, this was not our fault. If we get a cyber attacks and we're not ready for them, that is at least partially our fault.
It's all been said. I think we need to make sure we recruit the right brains, the right minds at the political side and at the industry side, and they are already there. So just pick them and speak with them and come up with something credible and implementable, and that makes real change.
Henrik?
Look, I think that the panel is a good example of why we need to come together, because we need to work together. This is about cooperation. These are common topics. We exactly have the same thing. Come from Latin America, come from North America, come from Europe. It's the same thing. If we would have some Asian guys, they would say exactly they have the same problems. So that's why this cooperation beyond borders, which has not been possible that much over the last 1.5 months, is so essential in order to deal with it. If we would have had maybe this openness, maybe we would have done many things better, faster, and in a more right way than we have been able to do now. So let's try to keep the channels open. Let's cooperate closely, because these are common challenges and there are common solutions to that. Or at least if not common solutions, then we learn from each other's solutions and modify them to our needs. And secondly, like Nick said, we need to work.
This is a safe environment where we can speak freely, and that's an asset that is worth a lot. So, yeah, I think it's worth.
Thank you so much. I can bring it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Okay. Thank you.
I think everybody, that was such a good end. It doesn't